Good morning. This is May 28, 2026, Minnesota Public Utilities Commission Agenda Meeting. I'll take a roll. Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
Commissioner Tooman.
I am here.
My name is Hui Kwon Ham, and quorum is present. So, Mr. Gomez, please introduce first item.
Good morning, Chair Ham and Commissioners. Item number 1 is docket number E002/M-25-142 in the matter of Xcel Energy's petition for certification of a mobile battery system. The questions before the Commission are: should the Commission approve, modify, or deny certification of the mobile battery storage system? Secondly, should the Commission approve, modify, or deny Xcel's request to streamline the certification process? I have no further remarks, but available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we will directly go into the Commissioner question. Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Commissioner Ham. I have a question for the Department of Commerce and then the company.
Okay, so there are some technical issues, so we have to start with a quorum. Okay, so I'll take a roll. Commissioner Sullivan?
Present.
Commissioner Tooman?
I'll be present too.
And then Mr. Gomez, thanks for your prior introduction of the docket, but we have to do it one more time. Thank you.
So good morning, Chair Ham and Commissioners. Item number 1 is docket number E002/M-25-142 in the matter of Xcel Energy's petition for certification of a mobile battery system. The questions before the Commission are: should the Commission approve, modify, or deny certification of the mobile battery storage system? And secondly, should the Commission approve, modify, or deny Xcel's request to streamline the certification process? I have no further remarks, but available for questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Commissioner Ham. So I'll start my question first for the department around the issue of, I know certification is this kind of weird hybrid subject of, it's not prudency, it's something beyond just approval, not really, so it is what it is. But I'm curious about, how do I want to phrase this, is that when I look at a mobile battery, I can see why the thing that worries me is that Xcel has a mobile battery that they use infrequently and then just most of the time just sits back at the yard and doesn't do much. But it's still a system-wide asset. It's still something that is there for anybody. So I guess I'm wondering if the department could just put a little bit more color around, like, what are you thinking? How do you think about this? How do you think about it as an asset, as a resource? And if, like, why is it, it seems to me it's like a bucket truck in a way, it's there, it's system-wide, it can be used for anybody. But like, I also get your point. I get the point, like, I don't want it to just sit in the yard. And so anyways, if you just put a little bit more color around it, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Sullivan, for your question. I'm going to pass that. My name is Peter Teglin for the department. I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Ari Zwick.
Chair Commissioners, I'm Ari Zwick with the Minnesota Department of Commerce. So we're approaching it primarily from how Xcel is describing it, which is just that it's mostly going to be used for new customer loads. When we look at their NWA projects, typically their batteries are much larger than this mobile battery is, and so that's where some of our load shape criticism came from, and by Xcel making comments that they don't expect there to be a backlog of projects. That means that if there is a gap, then it will be sitting around unless they use it for a different grid purpose. But again, you have the problem of the size of this battery compared to a traditional NWA project, which is not proportional. And so you're talking about maybe like a 500 kilowatt load, 250 kilowatt load that you could interconnect instead of like megawatts of gap in a traditional NWA project. So that's one difference, but we do still see them as equivalent. And so then what we're really looking for is just evidence that it's going to be used. And if there is to be a cost-sharing framework, that those potential customers would be willing to pay that much money. Hypothetically, we can lay out the argument that it's well worth the money, but we also want to see that there are willing participants. And so, like, we don't have a good idea of who's going to show up. There aren't identified customers, and so it's just kind of.
Are there other examples within kind of the resources that the company has where we do this cost share? I mean, I typically think once it's in the rate base, it's just separated out by class, and people pay according to their class cost of service, and however much they use. So is there another example where you basically do this kind of user pays framework?
Chair Hom, Commissioner Sullivan, we're working off of the Disrupt framework, which does that mechanism in a different context, and we're not so much concerned about one specific battery. It's more if there's like 5 or 10, or they want larger loads, that this starts running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. That's more of where we're looking at it. So the Disrupt is where that recommendation evolved from, that there is precedent to charge user fees which are not being distributed equally amongst ratepayers, even in the same customer class. So that's where we're coming from.
Okay. I guess I'd be interested in hearing from the company on this. I mean, this is also a question ultimately for later when we move to recovery, but I know we can certify this today, and then I looked at some of the, A, B, C, and D. Those are things that you're probably going to request through information requests when we get to cost recovery. But I suppose we'd be getting ahead of it by doing the decision option. Is that the way you think about it?
Chair Hom, Commissioner Sullivan, we just want to get ahead of the cost recovery proceedings so that it's on the record. It could be approved at the time of cost recovery as well.
Okay. To the company.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Riley Conlon on behalf of Xcel Energy. I'll start first with a higher level review of it, and then probably pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Munson, for some cleanup. I think there's several components to that question that we certainly appreciate the department's analysis here, including their value of lost load analysis, because I think, Commissioner Sullivan, you touched on a few points that resonated with us as we were looking at this mobile battery. And the first is we do see this as a system resource, and we do think there are broader benefits for the system than the most likely use case, which we've laid out. And when I kick it to Mr. Munson, I think he can talk a little bit more about those. The second part of this is we also agree with the point that you just made, that we think this is a cost recovery question. And if a project is certified, it is eligible for recovery through the TCR or review through the TCR process. And so that would be a question that we would work through in that framework. So I think from our perspective, we think that this question might be premature to determine what that looks like. And second, we think there are broader system benefits that my colleague, Mr. Munson, can speak to currently.
I suppose, too, when, say this is a resource that is larger than what, an average distribution level customer would receive, or an average residential customer, this is going to be for new customers, probably larger loads, right? So that would be in the cost allocation, that would be functionalized to them. Correct?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Brian Munson with Xcel Energy. Yes, that's generally correct. The battery is only so large because of the need to fit physically on a trailer. That being said, there is a wide range of types of customers that it could apply to, and that's sort of our concern and sort of how we view it as an overall system asset, that we believe that customers of really any any customer class could potentially be an applicable use case for the battery. Really, the battery is only intended to, it's not intended to match the customer's load exactly. It's only intended to shave the peak of how much that adding that customer load is going to exceed the feeder's limit or rating by. So even if it is a smaller customer or perhaps an even larger customer, it's
so
really
like-
just that portion of the overload that it's trying to.
So like you could add it, say a new housing development was built and that pumps the peak up into that area. You could have it sitting there, basically kind of like a little, shaves off that peak.
Yes, that's it. That's
And,
exactly.
and serving residential customers at the same time. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And that's the exact use case that we've identified in our Colorado operating company, which is a little bit ahead of where we are in Minnesota in terms of deploying the mobile battery. It's a low-income housing development that was going to exceed the distribution system's capabilities. And so the mobile battery is able to shave that peak and allow them to interconnect on a timeline that meets their needs and allows them to get the grants and incentives that they were needing to pursue on their timeline.
So in terms of the departments A, B, C, and D in their decision option 2, of those, I wouldn't imagine you would have a concern with any of them, or what would, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Mr.
Because
Chair.
I look at these as just kind of, they're priming the pump for a future discussion around this, but in any case, we'll have the discussion at another point in time. Certification is, from your perspective, what you want today.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sullivan, appreciate the question and the clarification of how you're viewing this as for discussion in a future cost recovery proceeding. I think as we've thought about this, we would naturally expect to include subparts A and B in a cost recovery proceeding. I think as we've laid out, we have concerns with subpart C for the reasons Mr. Munson just elaborated upon. And then part D, I think to the extent we have specific evidence at the time of maybe specific use cases for early years of mobilization, we probably could commit to providing that information. But as we know, this is a 15-year product, so we probably can't provide evidence or concrete customer needs in the latter years of the life cycle here. So
I found that part D is more of like a qualitative, like what, it's not quantitative, it's just a qualitative assessment. That's the way I read it to be. I do feel like C, and I'll ask the department, and then Mr. Chair, I'll move to kind of wrapping a bow around this quickly, and then I can.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Before you proceed, we heard some complaint from the online that the 2 microphone in my left, you guys need to really speak loud and hit the mic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. In terms of 2C, I looked at that as, putting the cart before the horse, but I'd give you the opportunity to respond to that.
Thank you, Chair Hom, Commissioner Sullivan. We look at 2C because we understand this battery to accelerate certain specific and location identified constraints on the distribution system that will be replaced by permanent poles and wires solutions. This is not a company in WA, which we realized during the crafting of our comments. Instead, this is something that facilitates faster economic development. And our analysis centered around the value of that lost load and the time value of that, essentially, which has value to the specific customers being interconnected, which is why we framed it within that disrupt context, which to us seemed analogous with, let's say, a solar developer bringing in a 5 megawatt project. There's economic value in getting that online 6 months earlier or 2 years earlier than it otherwise
The
would.
reason I thought that, it feels to me like a tariff filing happens after we make a recovery determination. That's why I thought that C was a little bit ahead of the cart in front of the horse. So that's where my brain goes to A, B, and D, to A, B, and D. That's where I was comfortable getting you that information to make the arguments of a future recovery. But I don't know if you've, I assume you feel differently, but feel free to talk me out of my thought.
Chair Hom, Commissioner Sullivan, that's fine with delaying a potential tariff filing. It was more, again, that we wanted to set up this framework to think about there is a very small and identifiable group of customers that we could allocate these costs to that is different from what has been done before. So the primary concern is anybody going to use it? So that's what D is aimed towards. And so if you're comfortable with just ordering that point, we can bring up the tariff if it goes to cost recovery at that time. That's not a problem. We're already on the record, and so we can reference our previous comments.
Okay.
Along this lines, to the company, make sure I heard this correctly. You're not saying a tariff is not needed in this situation. That's where I'm a little confused. So answer that question, because I think I agree with Commissioner Sullivan that it's that cost recovery typically for a new project. This is a new thing. We would ask then for a tariff language, and so asking for proposed tariff language at this stage could be appropriate, but I thought I heard you maybe saying that we may not even use a tariff, so I'm trying to track with you. Do you anticipate that cost recovery filing a tariff for this?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Tuma, thanks for the question. I think, and apologies if I was unclear about that part, the company's position is that cost recovery would occur in the TCR rider. And so as part of it would appear in the rider factor. So as part of the rider filing, that those costs would be incorporated into the rider. And so then the tariff, I believe, reflects what that rider rate is.
But we would have to approve the tariff at some point. And so I guess this comes to the certificate world that we're walking into. Mm-hmm. Do we approve the tariff at the point of certificate? Do we approve it at the point of recovery? And that's where I don't know the answer. I think you're hitting on it, Commissioner Sullivan, and I'm still not clear what.
See, like, yeah, I mean, certification is just one of these weird concepts, but I feel like if you start giving certification all the benefits of, yes, it's prudent, then that's not really what it is. Then we're just making a prudency determination at certification, right?
It's kind of like it's like a
yeah.
Kinda.
It's a weird hybrid concept that when I was a lobbyist thought was a good idea. Now
we'll just blame Frank
I
Hornstein.
think
I think we just blame Frank Hornstein, and then we're done, right?
I would like to ask another question, if you folks want to stay on this. But.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. I'll ask one question so you can have some break. So to the company, why do we need this? Why you cannot pre-build substation, pre-build feeder line to accommodate the new load? Why do you need a temporary solution to achieve that? Is it due to the supply chain issue, or is it new way to provide quicker service to your customer?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. We view this as an important tool in our toolbox to provide that adequate service to our customers. Obviously, pre-building to the extent possible, anticipating these needs and building out the system to meet those needs is an important part of our planning process, and we do that to the extent that we're able to, and we're continuously looking for ways to improve that process through improved accuracy to our forecasting and things like that. That being said, forecasts have inherent inaccuracy, and not every new load can be anticipated at the exact time that it'll come online. And so we view this battery as an important tool that helps us meet those customers' needs when they arise, if they're perhaps unexpected, or if perhaps they are the last sort of added load in that area that's going to push it over a limit and require maybe a longer-term upgrade, like an upgraded substation transformer or a new substation or something to that effect.
So in other words, you can over-forecast and overbuild, but this will give you ability to potentially right-size it, underbuild, but you can serve the new customer if you need to serve. So it's a tool to make your system more efficient, and then it'll cost less to the customer then.
Yeah, that's correct, per my understanding as as well. Yeah, that it really is that bridge to wires for the customer and allows us to, meet their needs on the timeline that they need, even if perhaps there are other situations that are developing on the system that require a longer lead time for the new infrastructure.
So when you are building new substation, new feeder line for potential new developments or new additional customer, what kind of process do we have as of today?
Mr. Chair, do you mean in terms of the actual sort of planning process for identifying the need for it? Or?
No, other than in the distribution system planning process, now you are subject to the integrated distribution system planning requirements. But in addition to that, do you need a certificate of need proceeding, or do you need the pre-approval of cost recovery of all those assets?
When a new substation is identified, or the need for a new substation is identified, we typically, we look at the risk that's been identified on that part of the system, look at the forecast that's perhaps justifying that need as well, and we use that to identify whether we believe it's prudent to move forward with that investment.
So if that certain infrastructure fall into the certificate of need proceeding, you do it, but if it doesn't fall into it, you don't have any approval process at this point.
Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. Yeah, if a certificate of need is required for perhaps a new transmission line to serve a new substation, we will follow that process. But beyond processes like that, for more lower level distribution level upgrades, we don't always have that type of formal process.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan.
I have a question now for the city of Minneapolis and the company. I don't know who from the city is here.
Hello, I'm here. This is Megan Hoy, Director of Climate Equity Action. Can you guys hear me?
I see Megan Hoy. Miss Hoy.
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Not well.
Okay, that's great. I can try to speak up a little bit more or try to change my microphone. Is that any better?
Not really.
Okay, hold on. Is that any better? Worse?
That's better. Much better.
Thank you.
Ms. Hoy, a question I have is looking at decision option 4. I read the decision options that the city is looking for, and I see them as a little bit broader than the streamlined certification process or what the department is seeking in decision option 2, but pretty well covered by decision options 2 and 5. So I'm just curious how you feel about my assessment of that, if there's something in decision option 4 beyond that you are, you really feel like is important that gets included, and then I'll ask to hear from the company on that too. But that's my question, Ms. Hoy.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. I think your read of it is relatively accurate. I think that you're probably getting at most of what we're looking for. I think understanding, while this is sort of its own more narrow use case and intention of what this technology will serve, that looking at what we can learn from this pilot for non-wires alternatives and how it can serve, at least in the city, areas where there's lower reliability or severe weather outages, things such as that. How can we learn from this kind of at the speed at which the project is happening, and that information is getting shared with stakeholders? So that's the intention. And understanding some of the conditions of where this technology is being deployed, and kind of what it's able to, what benefits it's able to provide, who it's providing them to. That's kind of why we were looking at that level of detail, or those types of details rather.
Yeah.
So that's the intention.
And I think that's an important point, just having some kind of feedback loop to understanding what the technology, how it's used, how it can be utilized, probably not just in new housing stock, but in existing housing stock. I think that that's a, and I'm hopeful that the company can commit to working with the city of Minneapolis and I mean, I'm open to crafting a decision option, to this effect, but I'd be interested in if the company has a thought on, what the city has said. That I think what what they're really looking for appears not. I don't want to say what they're really looking for, but that's a reasonable request to me, that they want to understand what you're doing with the technology, how it works, and how it can be beneficial, probably so that they can think about like how can we expand on and create new use cases for technologies like this. So,
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sullivan, thank you for the question, and thank you to the City of Minneapolis for the contribution to the record. We certainly understand what the request is here, and I think as written in the decision options, our slight concern is timing and sequencing, because this is an ongoing project that we are going to continually learn from. But prior to cost recovery, we won't have a lot of that information. We will have that. We will start to have that information once the project is in service, or very nearly. And so, I'll defer to Mr. Munson on what he thinks is doable. But I think we can commit to giving them information more on a rolling basis. Like I think we're willing to get there, and something we've talked about internally. But I'll defer to my colleague here to make sure he's comfortable with something like that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think we'd be happy to work with the city to provide clarification on sort of how the battery is being used and how ways we're exploring how it can be used in the future. I think one point to just perhaps clarify, for example, is that the battery, based on the way it has to be deployed with site development and things like that, it's not the type of asset that can be used in response to outages for reliability. However, that being said, there are other use cases, like perhaps absorbing energy on feeders with like limited hosting capacity, that could be explored as alternative use cases for the battery. I think that also highlights some of our concerns with the pro rata proposal as well, is that while the most likely use case is that it will be supporting an individual customer that might be adding load onto the system and causing an overload, that's not necessarily the only way that it could be used, and we're open to, with this being a new and innovative technology, exploring the different ways that it could be practically used. But regarding what the city has been discussing, we'd be happy to work with them and provide that clarification and have ongoing discussion.
okay, I'm comfortable with that.
If you're done, I have a follow-up question on that one. Thank you. So why can't you use this for the emergency backup? Is it because of configuration issue, or is it just a commitment issue?
Mr. Chair, it's primarily due to what is required for us to actually physically deploy the battery. We have to work with the various jurisdictions that are applicable to get permits. We also have to do site development, including building a firewall around the battery for safety purposes. And all of that takes time, and it's just not something that we're able to do on like a rapid response type of thing. That's the type of work that takes several months for us to get through.
Thank you. I think you should communicate those kind of information with the parties, because the first thing I thought about this project was, this can be very useful for the emergency backup. But that kind of detail should be very valuable to inform people that to do that, we have to intentionally build up certain capacity around there with a little bit longer time frame to put that there.
Yeah, my first thought was very similar to the natural gas system, where they drive the natural gas tanker out there and plug it right into the system.
Battery on a semi-truck.
Yeah, battery on a semi-truck. So yeah, it's not that. I think that was. I think that's pretty important to make sure it stands. It's not like that.
Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan, do you need a time to revise your decision option, or are you done with the questions?
I think I'm ready to go whenever.
I don't have any further. Commissioner Tuma, do you have any other questions?
So my motion will be, and first of all, I do want to thank all the parties. I appreciate the conversation here. One of the things that I thought that Mr. Gomez, you did a really nice job with the briefing papers, but having this conversation kind of, for me, breathes more life into what I think is a super interesting project. So thank you for taking the time there for the discussion. So my motion will be decision options 2, A, B, and D, and then decision option 5 to streamline the certification process going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Commissioner Sullivan, do you mean the all 5 A, B, C, D, or just 5?
5, all parts, A, B, C, and D.
Thank you. Any discussion? Please say aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Say nay for any opposition. So motion passed. Thank you. Mr. Janice, please introduce next docket.
Good morning, Chair Helm and Commissioners. Item number 2 is docket number TL24427, involving the application of Xcel Energy for a roll permit for the Northwest Maple Grove 115 kV transmission line project and the City of Maple Grove. The questions before the Commission are, should the Commission require an addendum to the environmental assessment? If an addendum is required, should the Commission authorize the issuance of an environmental assessment addendum scoping decision? Should the Commission issue a draft roll permit attached to these briefing papers? And should the Commission request an ALJ from CAH to conduct the public hearings for the project and prepare a summary of public testimony? My colleague Ray Kirsch from EIP and I are available for any questions. There were a decision option that was filed by Commissioner Tuma. There are paper copies of that in the back.
Thank you. And we will go directly into the Commissioner question. Commissioner Tuma.
Well, they're coming up and getting settled. I think, I'm assuming it's Mrs. Simonson online. Am I correct? If you can unmute yourself and state your name for the record so we can have that done.
Good morning. Yes. Hello. My name's Catherine Simonson, and I live in Weston Commons.
And just so you know our process, this is kind of an unusual world that you've walked into, and we appreciate your participation. We have read the record, all the commissioners have read the record, and typically we don't go through opening statements. It kind of does on occasion look like a city council meeting, but it also looks like our court meeting, and it's because we're quasi both of those. And so I apologize for the confusion. We have read the record. I have read your proposed alternative. I agree with the company. I don't know if you saw the company's indication that it will require a new substation if we had to tap it off of the 345. And so the proposal that you laid out, which we appreciate, and you're obviously, none of us are engineers. I'm not an engineer on utility stuff. I'm just a backwater attorney from Northfield, Minnesota. But it's always that you got to get that. I got to get that one in there. So I've read that, but I think if I could characterize, I think where you're coming from, because where you live is along the 150th route, that it's a residential type of area, and I think your desire is to avoid that 150th residential area that basically runs between the freeway and 81st County Road 81. And I think that's what I understand your concern is, and I'm going to try to dive into whether there's another alternative here in a minute, but I just wanted to characterize so you understand, by us not considering your alternative, I think I'm still going to try to solve the concern that you have. I don't know if I will or not. I have to ask a lot of questions, but that's what I'm going towards, and I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to respond to that characterization that I'm seeing your position being is more, I'm concerned about where they're placing it along 105th. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. The concern is that there are already two transmission lines, two sets, on the north end of our community. And so, yes, adding a high voltage transmission towers, another set, that would be 3 within 1/2 mile, and completely encapsulating the community here.
And thank you
So,
for your
thank you.
thank you for your participation. I know this is not what you probably want to be doing on a Thursday morning, so thank you for helping out. To Xcel, obviously you saw my decision option, and as I read your comments both in the application, and I will say that one of the things that we're going to try to work on in our application process under 216I is to maybe ask for a little bit more robust discussion of alternatives considered and rejected. And I think you'll see that coming from our staff in our conversations on how to best develop the 216I process. It's earlier engagement with you before filing the application. And one of the things that we've noticed on this docket and a couple other that we've had in the past, it's addressing that question. And I think we will find it, and this is the conversation we're having, is that we'll find it much easier to address some of those scoping meetings and stuff if we have a more thorough kind of contextual laying out of why particular routes are considered and rejected. But that's just an aside. Why don't you guys introduce yourself for the record, and we'll get into the discussion. And Mr. Bell, I think you see my decision option. I'll tell you what is the intent of it, and I'll see if you understand what I'm asking you. You notice I didn't give you an alignment, okay? I gave you an area. And I don't know if our folks have the map that they can put up of the map 4, which was the one that was the alternatives considered and rejected. Why don't you just zoom in on the left-hand side of that, or the right-hand side of that map, dyslexic left, sorry. Now, there should be another one. It should be map 4. It should have the next one. There you go. So zoom more if you could. Easier for people to read. So you gave me an alternative that you examined and kind of compared in your later comments, which was off the tap of the 115 kV between the railroad tracks and County Road 81. And I agree with your assessment that that's not a good route. There's future development going in that area. But what I saw in this map is that you had two taps that are right next to, south and north of, Maple Grove Avenue. And so our siting and routing criteria, which you followed on the
Commissioner
northern
Tuma,
part.
just want to make sure those are those two boxes there. You said two taps.
Boxes, yep.
Right?
Just right where it says, right just above where it says South Interconnect Option B.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's also South Interconnection Option A.
Just want to make sure I was following you.
Yep, those are the two. And so there was not a lot of discussion about that. There was discussion about the problems that are on the north end of your alternative. I agree with that, but the south end you didn't. You have the language in there. It's going to be difficult because it's tight going along. Essentially, it's going to be between target. If you see where it says existing Elm Creek substation, right behind the S and the E there, that's a target. Just down from that is a Slumberland, and just down from that is Home Depot. And we got about 100, and based on best I can guess, about 180 feet between the pavement and the pavement of the back end of Target. So it's tight. Yeah, GRE's headquarters not too far from here. So I get that. That was in your discussion. I don't know if that's the concern. I envision a route someplace between the substation or even from the substation and these two taps, all of which has to go, including your route, under the 345 double circuit, okay? Following existing infrastructure, or behind where it says South Interconnection Option B, that's a waste transfer station or that's where the local people drop their leaves and their garbage. So there's not a whole lot. So it's your property and that waste property. So there's a lot of opportunity to get down to 610, move down 610, either north or south of the interchange or the off ramp, on ramp, and then cross over towards Home Depot or Target in those areas, and then move across to the substation on the south side of 610. I envision that being on the property lines as much as possible between the state right-of-way and the property owners, okay? And to me, that's, I think, what was the intent of the statute that was created in the legislature a couple years ago, for us to look at these things. And so nowhere in there in the discussion did I see you say, such a route, there's no way. Technically, it's impossible to do that, okay? And so that's what I'm seeing in the record, so I need to start asking that question. It seems like it may not be easy, but from an energy, electric engineering standpoint, it is technically feasible. I don't know if the cost is going to be comparison, but that's the process we will go through in the next few months, is to figure out whether that route is cost effective or not, whether the crossing over 94 is better or not, how many trees are we going to lose, all those things. And so I just want to hear from you that it seems to me that you could draw me a line, okay, figure it out. You're engineers. I'm not going to do it. I'm not an engineer. You can draw me a line, the best, most technically feasible route, and that is the least cost or most expeditious from either those two square boxes, the south and interconnection A and B, or the substation. Is it technically, electrically, technically possible to do that?
Oh, okay. I apologize. Should I start over, or?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
Cliff notes. I got it.
Yeah.
Miss Simonson's on the online,
Yeah,
and I want her to be able to hear it.
So ultimately, the issue is that constructability issues between the south side of Highway 610 and the commercial development that is there, and that we would anticipate that that would increase the cost of the line for constructability reasons. There's also some, if there was an issue with the line, fixing the line would be more difficult because of that narrow passageway between the commercial buildings and Highway 610. And then farther to the west, the interchange between Highway 610 and Highway 94, there's a large topography, or there's a large height difference between the top of the interchange and the surrounding land, and as a consequence, the towers would need to be relatively high on either side of that interchange, and there would also need to be a relatively large span between those two towers. The only other thing that I would point out that is unique to the Elm Creek substation is that there is not currently a bay in that substation that could be used to accommodate especially a 115 kV line. We would likely therefore have to expand that substation, and it is surrounded by wetlands. So that would obviously present some environmental challenges there. The other two taps are obviously just a little bit south and east of where we're planning to tap. So, you know, although that area is, you know, congested, we are already planning to tap near to that.
Let's break this down just a little bit. You know, not expanding the substation, I have to ask that question, and that certainly can be a conversation. That's what we have a process for. It's important that it's technically feasible, and so now I have to decide, does it give me enough that I would want to examine another route? Okay. And so I want to break down a couple things. You could come right out of that substation and tap right there and cross under the line and stay on your property and get to 610 as quick as possible. I would think that would be technically feasible. If we have to do a tap, I think you can do that tap essentially anywhere between the substation and where your tap is, because at that stage the route turns north, or the existing line turns north. So we're limited by the fact that you got to get out of the substation far enough to not cause any problems, and you have to get the tap before it turns north. Is that correct?
I think that's right, and I mean there is a possibility of a tap in the two locations that we evaluated before. I assume that it would be feasible to have a tap, elsewhere on that line. I don't know exactly where that.
Yeah, and again, like that's what we do a studying process for. And you own a pretty good swath of land, and yes, there's water there. I saw that, and so we have to be conscious of that. Probably not as significant as I say would be crossing Rush Creek, but that's a judgment we have to make later. I'm not going to make that now. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and I saw your discussion about the route that was north of 610 and crossing over, then I would agree with you. There's a wetland there right at the corner, and you're crossing over the exit on-ramp from 610 to 94. There's a big span there, and there's a huge elevation change. What is different from the southerly route, which makes it somewhat interesting to me, is that MnDOT has built you a runway there. Okay, it's the Elm Creek exit, or that road that exit there. It goes along that Elm Creek exit. It's already elevated, and it crosses over the freeway elevated. And so it looks not a whole lot different than your proposed crossing to the north. They're both elevated above 94, about the same distance. The only difference would be is that there is an on-ramp from Rush Creek there that you would have to make sure that MnDOT is okay with you putting a pole between the on-ramp and the bridge. And so it seems like the concern of the crossing on the south side is less impactful than what is the north side. Am I incorrect in that?
I may actually have to defer to our engineer, Ben Golay, on that, if he would come up. There has been some change to this interchange, I think, as you likely know, in recent years.
And when you go to Google Maps, it doesn't even exist on a Google Maps.
Exactly. This was the problem I was having yesterday. But so I'm not certain exactly where the on-ramp is.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ben Galay with Xcel Energy, engineer, transmission line design. Yeah, you're correct. That interchange there has created elevated grade, and the logical point to do a crossing there would be right within essentially their water containment triangle that they made there between the ramp and the highways. We typically don't get a lot of positive feedback from the DOT about putting poles in that location, and it does create, again, the continued future maintenance, access, et cetera, issues of being along the highway. There's really no low volume road there then to access that structure if something has to happen in the future.
That's a question I'll have for Ms. Cockestead here in a second, but I don't want to make that prejudgment. We've been asked by the legislature to press some of these issues because they do see us not putting it in the right of way like some of our neighboring states do on a more frequent basis, and you don't know unless you ask, I guess, is the struggle. And I know the difficulty here, and I see that, is the challenge of asking. It adds time to the process. The statute was to create parameters so that they need to respond to you. They can't just slow walk it. So, I mean, there's a possibility here, and it seems like it's technically feasible. And I would point out on the technically feasible distance, I actually like the beginning of your proposed route because if you look at it, it's between a railroad and County Road 81. And I measured the distance using the county maps, so it's just spitballing. It's about 70 feet between the railroad and the corner of the pavement, or the edge of the pavement, the shoulder. Is that a fair assessment of it's kind of a little tight in there where your tap is? Is that fair?
Yes, Commissioner, that is also correct.
And it's a 55 mile an hour speed limit right there on County Road 81. So it's a high volume road. 81 is high volume. It's not 610, but it's high volume. The off ramp on 610 is 50 miles an hour. So I mean, it seems to me kind of apples to apples that these are both tight spots. There'll be a little bit longer, tighter spot along a 610 route. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, that's a fair assessment.
It opens up a little bit when you get to the west end of the route because they haven't developed the apartments there. There's room for you to maybe even move into their property a little bit if we had to, depending on what is the kind of consultation that you do. But the tightness really is that space between Target and Home Depot. Is that a fair assessment of the southerly route?
Yes, I'd agree with that.
And I guess the only thing, sorry, Commissioner Tuma, that I would add is that there is proposed future development on the west end of there, and we did get some feedback during the stakeholder process of development farther east for a medical building and a potential commercial building. And so there was adverse comments to that route from there, and ultimately the city of Maple Grove favored a northern route because of its concern about the impact on development along.
But that's when you presented to them that Niagara Avenue proposal. I'm saying stay away from Niagara. Stay right, get to 610 as soon as possible and follow that boundary line between 610, you know, if it's going down Maple Grove Parkway, whatever. And so my hope is that if we were to do another route and alignment, that you would consult with the city and say, okay, let's find the technically feasible route, efficient, gets through there, that works with your desires. That's what my hope is. I could have drawn a line on there what I think it is, but I don't want to do that. You could turn at Maple Grove and go behind Target. You could go past Target and Home Depot and cross the road there. I mean, there's options that seem to be technically feasible, whether it's the right route in comparison to this other area to the north, which has future development too. It's home residential. I would actually be curious what Maple Grove would think of that route versus what the Niagara route that you proposed. And to me, that would be beneficial. I don't know if that really has been fully vetted yet. I just want to make sure you respond to that.
Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma, yes, I mean, we understand the concern and could certainly engage with the city of Maple Grove on that alternative, and you know, if that's the direction the commissioner goes, look for a win-win in that sense.
I didn't fill in a lot of detail. I could make a little bit more detail in my decision option, but what I envisioned, and you tell me if I'm incorrect, that a couple weeks before the public meetings, you would have your engineering team have put together the most efficient, most technically feasible route near 610, okay, for public presentation, and have it filed so the public, like Ms. Simonson and them, can see what that route is, and Maple Grove can give their comments on it so that we are informed about what it is, and that would then be part of the process that we would go through with an actual alternative. Is that something the company could do?
Yes, Commissioner Tuma, I think that's correct. I think it would, as the decision option is written, my understanding is it would come in the form of an EA addendum that would analyze this, but
it really keys off of what you write. He can't start working on an addendum until he has a line, and I didn't give him a line for his staff. I don't know if Ray's going to actually do this one or if he's going to have one of his staff be assigned to it, but until he has a line. And so I left the line out because I want you guys to be able to draw what you think is the most efficient line. I don't want, you know, it to be the worst line. I want it to be a line that you think you could actually do, and then let's do apples to apples comparison, because there are some concerns I have with the northerly route. There's a lot of trees that'll be removed that I'm concerned about. That's a balance that I have to make. There are residents up there versus commercial area that's already commercialized area. Those are balances that we got to make, and cost comes into all this too. We don't want to have the ratepayers have to pay too much money, and so I'm trying to balance that out. And so I need what you think is the most efficient route. That's, I hear your commitment, and I'm happy with that commitment. So I know where I want to go, Mr. Chairman, but I'll leave it up to you how you want to proceed.
No, thank you. I have some high level, unless Commissioner Sullivan. Okay, thank you. So I know this is not a need discussion, but I have to ask you some high level need discussion. Why do you need this project?
Thank you, Commissioner or Chair Hom. Really the impetus for this project is load growth in the northwest suburbs. And so anybody who's driven along 94 in the last few years knows that there's a lot of development going on. The highway was recently under construction, may still be. There's a new Boston Scientific facility that is going up along that corridor. And so for reliability reasons, to accommodate that new development and organic residential and commercial development in the area, a new substation is needed that's more centrally located. And then, of course, that substation needs to tap into the system, and so that's the 2-mile transmission line. But it's really at the heart of it is that new West Maple Grove substation to accommodate load growth in the northwest suburbs and have a more centrally located substation.
Thank you. So surrounding area will get this benefit of this new substation. For example, for electrification, like having EV at home, and also if you want to transition from the natural gas heating to heat pump, and then also along with it, if there's any empty lots, and they can develop the new residential area and commercial area, right?
Chair Hom, that is correct.
So local community will get direct benefit from this substation.
Chair Hom, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Cox, like I said, I have you online. I'm kind of inclined to say to Xcel to give me a route that borders the state right away. And so that's going to trigger your obligation under the Next Gen Act. I just want to hear from you that you have a team ready to respond to this so that we can continue this important project for reliability in the neighborhood. Is that my understanding? I know they may have some concerns and we'll want to hear them, but I just want to make sure that you guys are ready to engage in this process.
Yes, Commissioner Tuma, we are. We received shape files to start reviewing the options a few days ago, and we will move forward with our continued consultation with Xcel Energy to find the best route. We actually are not too offended right now by the 610 southerly route, so conversations can be had. It's much less problematic than the 101 alternative, in our opinion, for several reasons, which I don't have to get into today, but we are ready to go. If we have to engage in another short E&M process, that's fine. Otherwise, we're ready.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Chair, I would move decision.
Commissioner Sullivan.
No, that's okay. No, it's okay. It just kind of came up. It's no big deal. One of the things I wanted to note that is in the record and is when we were talking about load growth, is there any connection to data centers for the load growth that you're envisioning for this line?
No, Chair Hom, Commissioner Sullivan, no, there's no, the purpose for this line is not to serve data centers.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have one follow-up. So typically, hyperscaler data center directly connect to your substation or directly to the very high-level voltage line, so they get direct service rather than this kind of a distribution system service, right?
Chair Hahn, yes, that's correct. Typically, hyperscale-sized data centers would connect directly to a line with a new substation purpose-built for that connection.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, thanks for Commissioner Sullivan. I think we have to explain this every time because the public need this kind of information to make sure that they have a right concern is located in right place. I think a lot of time, a lot of public has a concern with the data center is dictating these things. I think this is a particularly for local development for the housing and small commercial developments, not for the big data center. Thank you for that question.
We'd probably be tapping off the 345 if it was a data center. So yeah. So you ready?
Yeah, unless Commissioner Sullivan has anything else.
It's passed. So I would move decision option, TUMA decision option 1, with the understanding that the company has committed to work with the MnDOT and Maple Grove to identify the most efficient route alternative so they get it to our staff in time for the public meetings. Thank you for that. And then I would move decision option 3. And then I'm going to, Chad, modify decision option 5. And it would read, request that the administrative law judge from the Court of Administrative Hearings conduct a public hearing for the project and prepare findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations. I think our language also says on the merits of the proposed route permit application and any necessary route permit conditions. It's the standard language we always throw in there.
Commissioner Howe, may I just interject briefly?
Yes.
I think what you wanted to move was 1D.
1D. Yes. Yeah. TUMA 1D. That. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other discussion?
One last thing. I just wanted to say, Commissioner Tuma, thank you for all the work that you put in this. I appreciate it. And it makes a difference. And I can tell that, at least I hope the public sees that you are deeply concerned and watching and thinking about how to.
Our staff did a great job on this too.
Yep.
Just trying to understand it. We don't know where it's going to be. Ms. Simonson, don't get too excited. It could be your route is the most appropriate route. We have to make a decision, and so that is what it is. But we appreciate your participation and certainly bug your city to make sure that they're paying attention and weighing in on this. So thank you for being here.
Yes, and I just wanted to weigh in. It's a highly residential route down 105th. So if you're not putting it by 81 and the residential growth, because of the residential growth happening behind there doesn't seem to be a good reason to put it down 105th because there's a lot of people here too.
But stay engaged. We'll want that participation in the record when we get to that. There'll be a point for you to put that into the record in front of the ALJ and stuff like that. But I just wanted to thank you for your participation so far.
Thank you.
So everybody understand the motion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Say nay if you don't agree with it. Thank you. It's passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good work.
Yeah, we can take about 10-minute break. Thank you. We are in recess. So we are back from the recess. I think next docket is docket number 3, agenda item number 3. Mr. Jennings, please introduce the next docket.
Good morning again, Chair, Hom, Commissioners. Item number 3 is docket number 2599, which concerns the 2025 Minnesota Biennial Transmission Projects Report. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission accept the 2025 Biennial Transmission Project Report? There is a decision option that was filed by Commissioner Hom that there are copies of on the back of the room for those who are interested.
Thank you. So I have a question, one question to the department, one question to the MTO. So for the department, so decision option 4 is a kind of homework to the department. So I need to ask your opinion. Do you think that's a reasonable decision option, or do you want to revise that option, or you can tell me if you cannot do it?
Commissioners, Steve Alco from the department. It would be best first for the decision option to request the utilities to provide the information rather than the department trying to chase it down, because frankly we'll forget. We don't have staffs that reminds us to go chase these things down. And number 2, it would be very helpful for anybody to have a clear definition of what is the information you're exactly looking for. You could imagine just draw a straight line between the 2 endpoints, and anytime you deviate from that, you're mitigating some impacts of some sort. Probably that's not what you're looking for, and so a better, clearer definition of what sorts of things you're looking for.
So I think we haven't gone into that discussion in the next item. So in next item, we are asking a lot of different information and data only that focus on the gets. But along that line, I think you can collect this data there too. So I don't know whether you can answer based on the next docket, which we haven't discussed. But if he makes certain decision in that docket, do you think you will get enough information to track this kind of information?
That I can't say. I was not deeply involved in the gets portion of the proceeding.
Okay, thank you. And for the MTO, so have you seen my decision option 7? Can you do it?
Good morning, Chair Hom and Commissioners. Christy Brisbane, appearing on behalf of the Minnesota Transmission Owners, or the MTO. So we have seen the decision option number 7 that you've proposed. I think we're fine with filing it. It would be helpful for us to understand why it would be helpful for you to have that information here as well. So a little bit of context would be good, but I think we're agreeable to filing it if it's useful to the Commission.
Thank you. So the reason is I think a lot of public has a concern that there is a potential cost shift from the data center load to the existing customer. As of today, most of the hyperscaler data center is using this process to interconnect. So that visibility will help public to understand what is going on. So I don't know whether you want to do it every time you file it and publish in Statute Review and give it to everybody else, or another option is filing that information in this docket. So if people has a keen interest, can track that information in this docket. I know that you can say that it's available in the MISO, but a lot of people, particularly public, has no ability to track that information there. That's why we are trying to use this docket as a vehicle to inform public about what's going on, to make sure that there is a transparency about we are trying to make sure that we are protecting existing customer, not bearing any potential cost from the data center interconnection.
Thank you, Chair Hom. With that explanation, again, we have no objection to providing it in this docket. If I might also just note on your question to the department on number 4, even closer, usually can be heard. I've been participating in the biennial report, transmission report now for a number of years. I think this particular decision option has been there for almost as many years as I've been doing this. And so we'll continue to work as individual utilities with the department on information in those rate proceedings that are helpful. But I think many reports ago, it was determined that those proceedings were more appropriate than this one for trying to quantify and provide those costs.
Yeah, my understanding is our staff is trying to help to build up the information prior to that specific recovery dockets, because sometimes it's very difficult to do that. But also I think the department has a concern with it, so probably at this time we don't need to do it. But I think everybody should have this in mind, that I think a lot of information going on at the MISO level, and then the next docket, the next agenda item, we will discuss what it means to the people. So I think hopefully we can track these kind of information one way or another. Thank you. So I'm ready to make a motion unless the commissioner has any other. Okay, in that case, I like to make a motion to move decision option 1, 3, 5, 6, Harm News 7. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. It's passed unanimously.
Oh, my goodness. Uh-oh. She spilled some water there. So. Isabel. Oh, there's someone there. Yeah. You know, at least Craig doesn't spill water. I don't know. Water and electricity, we know, don't work together very well. So.
Okay, Ms. Ricker, can you introduce the next item?
Thank you, Chair Hom and Commissioners. The next item is the same docket, E999/M-25-99, in the matter of the 2025 Minnesota Biennial Transmission Projects Report. This item is regarding the 2025 Grid Enhancing Technologies Report. The issues before the Commission are: should the Commission accept the Minnesota Transmission Owners 2025 Grid Enhancing Technologies Report, and should the Commission approve, reject, or modify the MTO's 2025 GETS implementation plan? There have been several additional filings since briefing papers were filed. All of these are available at the side table. First, staff filed compiled decision options on May 26th, including modifications from the department from clean energy organizations and MTOs. The department separately filed modifications on May 26th, and staff filed one further modification on May 27th. Commissioners should have copies of each of these filings, and there is one additional handout at the side table as well, which we will show on the screen when it comes up. Parties are available in the room and online, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So can you bring that up on the screen? Yeah, before we go into the any discussion of this issue, and we have to show people, public, what it means, what we are discussing this today intensively. This is the most recent MISO Independent Market Monitor quarterly report related to congestion and curtailment. So first page is about congestion number. Dollar amount is huge, particularly upper Midwest. Wind and non-wind curtailment number is huge. And can you move to the second page? Thank you. Also, we are not fully utilizing our wind turbines. And this is underestimate because this is the only difference between day ahead and real time. So there are other potential curtailments. So literally one 500 megawatt power plant is idling. This is what we are discussing today and why this grid enhancing technology potentially relieve this a lot of congestion. We are struggling, and then public and the ratepayers are struggling with affordability issue. We understand our utilities doing great, and then we know that on average we are making sure that our ratepayers are not paying a lot of rates for that cost, but certain segment of the ratepayers are still struggling to pay for their day-to-day expense, but also meantime they have to pay for this rate. So we have to be very mindful about how to reduce the cost as much as possible. Sometimes grid enhancing technology, particularly like system reconfiguration, is close to zero cost. And then what I heard recently, one of the recent cases is about $50 to $60 million saving. So that means the ratepayer will save them money because in our system, any money utility save will directly go to the ratepayers. So I think that's why please keep that in mind when we are discussing this docket today. We are trying to make sure that we are trying our best to help our ratepayers. Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner Hom, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you bringing this up, this context up, because a lot of times in these conversations they seem extremely esoteric to the public and even to people who know what's going on, but fundamentally that's what this is about. And I really appreciate you bringing this up and putting forward the IMMs, this is the independent market monitors. These are their graphs from MISO, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. I think this is important. So,
yeah, thank you. Okay, now we start with some question on these things. So, I have a series of questions, but if other commissioner has any other question, I can start with. Okay, so once again, in high level, I think everybody agree on principle on these dockets. And I don't think anybody is disputing it and doubting. I think it's just a matter of the details. So I'm glad that we are going in the right direction on this. I think as we saw in the prior two slides, this is about saving money for our ratepayers. Being said, there are some objection from the MTO in certain decision options, so I need to ask why MTO is objecting to it. So I'll start with the easy one. I think this is not objected by MTO yet because it's a newly filed option. So decision option 21, CEO provide modification to the item E. Is there any concern from the MTO on that part?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Chair Hom, Christy Brisbane appearing on behalf of the Minnesota transmission owners. No, there is no objection to CEO's modified 21.
Thank you. That makes things easier. Okay, decision option 27. And then also there's a modification by department on that decision option 27. So originally MTO was, I think, objecting to it, right? And
that's correct.
So are you, first of all, why are you objecting to it? Second, are you now okay with the department's modification?
Chair Hom, so the reason that MTO originally objected is because we think that the AARs are relevant to the discussion. Sometimes implementation of the AARs make GETS either less effective or not necessary. And so in the context of making sure that we're evaluating all available technologies and delivering the best solution, we think it's relevant to the GETS report to include that in our analysis and make it available to you and the department and the public as part of that analysis. So that was the primary driver for our initial objection of excluding it from future GETS reports. Even though, again, we understand it is a required element, but it's again relevant for determining when other GETS solutions may or may not be appropriate.
Okay, I think understanding department's logic is under Order 881 by FERC, you have to do it anyway. So you have to implement that. After you implement that, it has to be your baseline. That means you have no other alternative, that's okay. But it's just a matter of semantics. You say we have an AAR, or we have no additional alternative beyond AAR. To me, it's the same thing. So that's why I was wondering why you are objecting to it, because everybody understands that that will be your baseline because you are required to do it. So,
Commissioner Hom, I do think that the department's modification improves on the original language, and so we're okay with that modified language.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Department, I didn't understand what you meant by one additional solution, so alternative essentially. Featuring. So it means exclusively those that you list, or could they feature something?
Name is Forrest Eidbo with the department. Thank you, Chair Hom. Commissioner Tuma, on that, we selected these GETS options because.
Okay, you can answer. Okay. I didn't turn my mic on. I'm the offender today.
Okay, sorry. I know we've had a lot of mic problems, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't have to end up saying it myself again. But yeah, so we selected those GETS options because it referenced our discussion in our supplemental comments. That is not to say if the commission chooses to expand that, we wouldn't be opposed. We believe that those GETS are the ones, as mentioned in the record, are the most commercially available and would likely be the easiest to analyze in the alternatives.
The way you have it designed, though, I'm mostly asking a question not for me, but for these guys. If they find something that is equivalent or similar to these, and they want to analyze that, they don't have to come ask permission. You just say, and that's why I was trying to understand the word featuring. You just want them to analyze an alternative, and I guess it's up to them if they do, and we want to question it. That's different than this list. You're okay with that. They just have to justify it.
Yes, Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma, that is correct. As kind of is explained in some of our other decision options, we're certainly okay exploring additional GETS solutions throughout the analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. So next question is about the decision option 28 and 29. I think particularly 29A. Why MTO is objecting to this? Because I think you're already doing it anyway. That's why I'm very curious about many of these objections. The decision option 29, item A under that.
Good morning, Chair Hom, Commissioners. My name is Matt Ellis. I'm from Great River Energy on behalf of the MTOs today. Thank you for the question. So the question, as I understand it, why was the MTO opposed to 29A, decision option 29A? As you mentioned, we are including in the GETS analysis not only a historical look back to identify congestion that's from the last 3 previous years, but also a forward look. And when we do the forward look, we are including those planned outages. I think our opposition really comes down to how do we calculate the payback period specifically. So we are considering those impacts of future congestion on a forward-looking basis when we're evaluating these solutions, but the payback period is based off of the 3 previous years' congestion trends. The reason we support that is one, it's straightforward, it's defendable, and it's very much in line with the focus of this study, which is to address near-term congestion. And so we like the way that it's done right now, where it's considered, but it's not included in the payback period, is our preferred approach. And that was the simple reason for our opposition. We're not against doing the analysis or considering this.
So if I move this 29A to the 28, so you can support that.
Just conferring. Commissioner Hum, yes, if you moved A from 29 up under 28 and made it a 28A, we are agreeable.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next one is a 38.
Chair Hum, so there are two concerns that MTO has about number 38. The first is our general concern about the expansion of the additional range of benefits and costs. I think we've have a number of concerns about trying to pull in what are really generation-related costs that are not technically supposed to be available to the transmission owners, to be pretty clear about that. But also that, you know, the commission has wrestled this question before and sort of said that those curtailment and other tax benefits, et cetera, are outside the scope of what the commission's, you know, really focused on in terms of the GETs. And so that is one portion of the objection. The second is that this would have us in the 2027 report going back and recalculating the 2025 identified constraints. At this point, if the commission were to broaden the benefits that are analyzed, we think that that should be done for the purposes of the 2027 report. So again, if there's a constraint that wasn't solved for in 2025 and it still appears in 27, we'd be doing the analysis on that constraint. But we'd prefer at this point, given that we're trying to implement and move forward with the projects that have been identified, not to have to go back and calculate again in 2027 with, you know, what those cost benefits are in a wider range.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I also understand you guys are not just investment utility. So we don't regulate rates of the non-IOU. So I think this is a more complicated than transmission owner versus a generation owner versus a vertically integrated utility. So we have a mixture of all those. So yeah, thanks for your answer. So let's go with the 39.
So before we jump ahead.
Yeah. Do you have a question about 38?
Yeah, if I could. I mean, I don't, and I think that's what they're saying. I just want to make tracking. We can track this as part of recovery dockets as opposed to here. Is that what you're saying, Ms. Brusman, or is that?
Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma, certainly that would be one option. But we're, as an analysis, again, from the MTO perspective, again, we're the transmission owners not having access or shouldn't have access to all of the generation-related information. And then to Chair Hom's point, there are a number of utilities within the MTO that are not rate regulated. And so both of those things make it a challenge for this group to pull that information together reliably for you in this proceeding.
I just want to hear from Doc. I mean, this is your proposal initially. And so that was my note that I just wrote on this. We can get this someplace else. What would be your reasoning to want to do it here?
When you, Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma, could you?
When I say here, the GETS report. Essentially, we're in this docket, I guess.
Versus looking in individual dockets for.
So whatever rate recovery mechanism that we're going after, rate case, riders, whatever.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma. I think this goes to some of our comments as it relates to other kind of trying to have this be a clearinghouse for GETS related information. there's another decision option we might get to about having discussion in CNs versus in the GETS docket. And our goal is to have this docket and this process be as comprehensive as possible and as transparent as possible when we're thinking about GETS and transmission constraints. So that's really our goal is to make it as accessible as possible so you're not having to look everywhere else.
Thank you. So let's go to 39.
So Chair Hom, the MTO's objection to 39 is similar to our objection to 38 in terms of, again, the expansion of trying to pull this information into this docket and it just being an extreme challenge for MTO to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that we've had a little bit of this conversation, you know, thinking about how we deal with these tools that are out there in the market and whether we should even be opening up a whole, either an investigation on them or drilling down even further in our rate recovery. So I like the concept here. So I like the concept of where you guys are going. Is there value for it being here, or is it valuable for us just to get more in depth and stick our hands into it a little bit deeper?
That was my understanding too, and then my preference, because this biennial transmission report is not only for our 3 IOUs. This is a comprehensive report from all transmission-owned utilities in Minnesota. So it's better we separate that to those 3. We can control their rates and then isolate those 3. Companies issuing different docket might be a better place to do it rather than this place. Yep.
That's good.
So next one is 45, and also there is a DOC modification.
Commissioner Hom, the MTO's objection to number 45 is really, this is the first time we've done the GETS report. The methodology that we used was successful in identifying projects for implementation, but we're at a point where we haven't fully implemented that set yet, and so to sort of, create a new expectation and redo the payback periods now before we've even got kind of the first set of projects under our belts seems premature. And so our preference would be to go into the 2027 GETS report with the same methodology, making sure that we've used the learnings from the projects we've implemented between then and now. And then, in future years, if further modifications are required, we could bring those forward. But at this point, it just seems early to do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's the question I have on that MTO's objections. Any other question from the other commissioners? So I need about 10 minutes so I can consult with the staff to finalize my potential motion. Thank you. So we are in recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. We are back from the recess. Before I make a motion, I have one more question to MTO. So this is a little bit off from this one, but yesterday we have a planning meeting, and I learned very interesting thing, but I didn't have a time to ask question. Yesterday we had a special planning meeting, and then Grid Catalyst had their presentation that Great River Energy and our investment utilities are working with that entity on some grid modernization and grid enhanced technology. So do you have any idea what's going on? Can you reveal that? I was very positively surprised that, yeah, because individually doing grid enhancing technology is beneficial, but if we are doing it in group, that will be more beneficial. That's why I was wondering whether you can reveal anything, because there was no specificity about it.
Commissioner Hahn, thank you for the question. I would love to provide additional information. Unfortunately, my colleague Jason Sang and I don't have that information. I don't know if there's anyone online from the Minnesota transmission owners that has that information. Maybe I'll pause. If not, we'd be more than happy to follow up with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a more personal curiosity, because that was a very positive development. Because single utility, I mean, working on this thing is great, but even better if our utilities get together. I was hoping that more Minnesota utilities get together beyond those 4 utilities, so we can have a better Minnesota-wide energy efficient and grid enhancing technology that we can improve our grid utilization rates.
We agree. We'll follow up with you to learn more.
Okay, thank you. So unless other commissioner has a question, I have plan to make a motion.
Working off of staff filed May 28th, 2026 decision options.
So I was using original decision option, but I'll try to make sure that what I am deviating from the original.
Okay. I can work off the original too, because I got both.
Thank you. So I'll start with decision option 2 and 2A. And decision option 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 13, 14. Here is a deviation. There is a 16 modified new decision option by staff, which was filed May 27th.
That's what I have is the MTO modified 16.
That was further modified by staff and filed on May 27th by Ms. Ricker. 20 and 21 A through F, and item E is modified CEO. (26) 27 modified by department. And next one is a totally new, which is not in there, but I'm bringing up 29A to 28, so it'll be a modified 28. (33), 34, 40, 41, 43, 48. So I'll give some time for the MTO to consider and whether there is any concern with any part.
Chair Hum, the MTO supports the motion and understands all of the modifications you've included.
Okay, so I made this motion with understanding that Minnesota Investment Utility will work with the department to track all those information I didn't include in this one because that is more for the investment utility to make sure that they have a full access to those information in your cost recovery dockets or the annual AAA dockets. And then departments, yes, I didn't include that in this motion, but I hope that department can work with utility to track those information in the different dockets. So I really appreciate your trying to bring this in more daylights, but I think also there's a complication that doing that in this docket because it involves more than investment utility, and that can create more trouble than more transparency. So I was hoping that that is done in the different individual docket, rate case, certificate of need, and annual energy AAA true-up dockets. Any discussion?
Thank you, Chair Hom. I just wanted to note that the department flagged for me there are a few decision options that may need a correction to include ARR as well as FTR, and I want to check with them if they feel any of those corrections are needed in the motion or not.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Chair Hom and Commissioners, thank you very much. We did notice that in decision option 40, 41, and 43 of the motion, ARRs should be included with FTRs based off of staff briefing paper discussion and also the discussion in the record, as they are very similar and linked financial products.
Thank you. So ARR is annual auction revenue rights, which is a basis for the creation of the FTR. So both has a financial stream to the utility. So I think that is right. That I think technically correct include ARR. So all those three items, FTR should be replaced with FTR and ARR.
MTO agrees.
Thank you. Thank you. So everybody's good with the motion?
Liking it.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it passed unanimously. Thank you. So we have to decide whether we will reconvene at 12:30 as noticed, or do we need more time for no later than 12:30, so we can delay a little bit, right? So are you okay with the 30-minute?
Look at the notice, so.
Yeah, so no sooner, yeah, no later. So we can have a 45 minutes for the lunch, or so we can reconvene at 12:45.
Back at 12:45.
Yeah, thank you. We are back from the recess. Mr. Panay, please introduce next item.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioner Sullivan and Tuma. Item 5 on today's agenda is docket number IP 7013/TL-25-389. It is in the matter of the application of Big Bend Wind LLC and Great River Energy for a route permit for a 161 kilovolt high voltage transmission line and associated facilities in Martin County, Minnesota. The questions before you today are, should the Commission grant a route permit for the proposed project? If granted, what additional conditions or recommendations should be included in the route permit? And lastly, should the Commission approve and adopt the applicant's proposed findings of fact and conclusions for the project as amended by staff? Wanted to state that we have two recent filings. One was a new decision option 5, which is filed in the docket from 2 days ago, introduced by Commissioner Tuma. We have a response letter from the applicant responding to the staff proposed route permit. And I also have prepared a new decision option 6 to consider the comments received from the applicant. Has not been filed. Copies are at the corner of the table, and the commissioners have received copies. I just want to mention that the applicants had requested a few minutes to make some introductory comments today, and we have in attendance my colleague Rich Davis, Energy Facilities Manager from PUC Energy Infrastructure Permitting, and we have at the back of the room Ms. Samantha Bump representing DNR. And of course, representatives from Big Bend and GRE are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panay. So, yeah, I am thinking granting the applicant to make its statement, but is it new statement or new issue, or do you want to just reiterate the same thing? I want to make sure that we are not reiterating whatever is already filed.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Hom. The request from the applicants was one of just a personal request, if you will, as a supervisor and a supervisee. My colleague Ryan Cox has been working in the Energy Department for quite a while, and he has yet to make an appearance before the Commission, and so we hope that a brief introduction, which will be information from the record, would be allowed so that he can have his first experience here at the bench.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Hom, Commissioners. My name is Ryan Cox. I'm an attorney at Frederickson & Byron, here on behalf of the applicants Big Bend Wind LLC and Great River Energy. I'm joined today by my co-counsel, Christy Brusman, and also Bree Anderson and Brian Hunker from the applicants, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Bree Anderson, Senior Director of Project Permitting for Big Bend Wind.
The applicants have applied for a route permit for a new 4.5 mile 161 kV single circuit transmission line and associated facilities, including new substations referred to as the Big Bend Transmission Line Extension Project. As the name suggests, the project is crucial to connect the already permitted Big Bend Wind project to its new point of interconnection at Great River Energy's Lakefield generating substation in Martin County, Minnesota. Big Bend has already secured 100% of the private easements from landowners for the proposed right-of-way for the project, and we plan to start construction on the transmission line in 2026 with an estimated in-service date of March 2028. At the March 12th agenda meeting, the Commission, after considering the merits of the Shoal route alternative, decided not to study that alternative and did not require an EA addendum to be completed for this project. But since that meeting, the applicants have conducted additional consultation with landowners and also the Cedar Lutheran Cemetery Association. The applicants have already reached an agreement with the association to plant trees to provide some screening to minimize the aesthetic and visual impacts of the proposed transmission line. And at this time, I'll allow my co-counsel to address staff's and commissioners' decision options. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, but I think we will go directly with the Commissioner Tuma question first before you make that.
Mr. Cox had it right, Ms. Brusman. I assume you're okay with 6 as drafted.
Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma, we are, and thank you for that inclusion.
So it made sense. I get where you're going with that. So, and then 5, we've had a conversation. I'll just lay out to you my thinking on it. You have whether it's a word or not, permittable route that you've agreed with Mr. Anderson. What jumped out to me in Mr. Anderson's testimony that you provided in the response to the IR that we had, or that you provided in it, is that he wanted it along the road. Okay, and so I was trying to think, what can we do? I understand that you have an agreement with him. Mr. Anderson deserves our greatest praise for being willing to help out. This community deserves our greatest praise. Thank you for talking to Mr. Hansen, clearly indicating that the Shoals alternative, as Dana had presented it, doesn't work. But our routing factors would tell me that the best routing factor is staying along the road, just anchoring a regular pole right across from the church, going back 800 feet onto the south side of Mr. Anderson's property to the east, and then going 800 feet into Mr. Scholl's property on the north side of the road, and then anchoring the next one 800 feet down the road. So that's what my decision option was, giving you that option. If you want to have that conversation to save you money, maybe you've already bought the poles, I don't know. Maybe the church has told you, because when I read the testimony, okay, they may have already said, absolutely no way do we want it on the south side of the road, and problem solved, okay? Mr. Anderson may say, no, I like it crossing my field. I wouldn't if I was Mr. Anderson, but I don't know. He obviously agreed to it. I don't know if he likes it better or not. So I wasn't wanting you just to call Mr. Stephen Scholes up and say, hey, how's it going? We have a meeting. I wanted you to say, would you be open to this? And then I'm going to go talk to the church and Mr. Anderson if they're open to it. I still want to give you that flexibility. I think it's a permittable route, and I appreciate Mr. Anderson's approach to this. But if it is flexible, that would meet our routing criteria better, shorter, less expensive, less right-of-way, shorter structures. And so the way I drafted decision option 5, Ms. Brusman, again, plan and profile. Mr. Davis would have no problem sitting there making sure everything is followed through. He's done this before. And it's not my route. I'm not sitting there going, oh, I love this route. It must be this route, okay? There are negatives to this route, the route I'm suggesting, because it is closer physically to the church building. It's, I believe, somewhere right around 75 feet from the nearest headstone. There's probably not a lot of mitigation that you can do from siting on the north side. But I don't know what the church wants. There were several members who had church members in there saying, put the line right over the church. What do I care? Okay? So there's a lot of different things going on in this community, and because this community has acted so well, they've hosted so much of our infrastructure, flexibility is all I want to give them. So, Ms. Brusman, are you okay with 5 as written, or would you like to modify it?
Chair Hom and Commissioner Tuma, we're fine with 5 as it's drafted. We appreciate the flexibility and understand where you're headed and the conversation you're looking for.
Excellent. I'm ready to go when everybody else is.
Commissioner Sullivan, are you good? Okay. Commissioner Tuma, can you make a motion then?
So decision option 1, decision option 2, decision option 4, Tuma 5, and applicants new 6. Got the landscape covered, Ms. Brusman? Mr. Cox, do we have the landscape covered?
Yeah, I don't think we need 2 if we're moving for new 6.
Thank you, Chair Ham. Yes, I was going to say that the way I wrote the 6 is to take 2 and add the comments from the applicant. So in essence, 6 replaces 2.
Excellent. 1, 4, 5, and 6. Good work, Mr. Cox. You have a future here.
Any discussion? So all in favor of all options, say aye.
Aye.
passed unanimously. Thank you. So, Mr. Weber, can you introduce next item?
Good afternoon, Chair Hom and Commissioners. Item number 6 is docket number E999/R-26-172 in the matter of a possible rulemaking to amend Minnesota rules, chapters 7849 and 7850. The question before the Commission is should the Commission grant or deny the petition Carol Overland filed on April 15th, 2026. I have no further remarks, but I and my colleagues are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Overland, at this point, I'm not going to allow any opening remark because we already read your petition, and I really appreciate your petition. I think you identify issue that we need to pay attention, and thanks for that. But we will go directly from the commissioner question. If any commissioner has a question to you, then we can start from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hom. I do have a question for Ms. Overland. Ms. Overland, when I read your petition and reviewed the briefing papers, I thought that, fundamentally the point that you make that there are no rules is the rules were incorporated in the statute. So actually, I'm not saying that you're being disingenuous, but the rules were incorporated in the statute, which is, as you know, is actually of higher authority than the rules. So when the legislature passed the new 216I framework, they incorporated it, and I thought that the briefing papers did a good job on page 6 and 7 of showing how they track in, how the old rule tracks into the new statute. So when you're saying, and I know that there are a number of folks who have, or a couple folks who have commented in the record that these projects are being built without rules, they're being built because the statute is now incorporates that rule. So I want to give you the opportunity to respond to that, just that fundamental point that the rule is already there. It is just now a statute by legislative fiat, it's passed and adopted by the legislature. And so I look at this now as a fairly straightforward, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Chair Hum and Mr. Sullivan. First, the statutes do say that the commission may promulgate rules. Why would they say that if it were incorporated? That putting that option out there is
it's permissive. It's giving us authority, but it's not saying you have to. If the legislature said you have to do this, that may would have been shall.
Correct. No one's arguing that it is a shall. It is a may. That's very clear in my petition. It said it's may, and I quoted it directly. But because they are offering that to me that says there's recognition that there's a need for it. And I'm looking at, for example, the prior rulemaking that was R121246 that we worked on for years and years, and that was to incorporate the changes of 2005 into the rules, and then that was tossed by the commission, all our work right out the window. And I'm looking at the siting of wind projects for the last 20 years. 7854 has no rules for siting wind. And instead of using those rules, what's been happening for the last 20 years is they've been cited under the small wind guidance. And so I'm looking at the commission's treatment of rules, lack of rules, and I think it's a systemic problem, and I think the commission should deal with it.
Okay. I mean, I hear you. I mean, I think with regard to this specific instance, the rules are just clearly incorporated into statute. And I think that we operate and we're citing and routing many, many projects, many infrastructure projects. And, you know, my response is at a macro level, because that's where I think this is at. But I think we are constantly referencing the rules and constantly referencing the statutes. And these projects are being built within that framework. So from that perspective, I don't see, yeah.
Well, in referencing the rules, constantly referencing the rules, we just had a recent filing from, I don't remember, I think it was the commission, referencing a rule saying that, well, we can do it this way as if this rule, and citing a rule that was repealed. You know, so that tells me that there's a need for rules. And, you know, again, if they were truthfully incorporated, why would they give the option to promulgate rules? If that was presumed, that statute wouldn't even be necessary. And we're looking at citing right now, you've got this tranche 1.2.1, where 345s all through Minnesota, and the first 765 ever in Minnesota, from border to border, which is one project, which we all know that. To do that without rules, and that's right now we're in certificate of need. And there is an admission from the transmission owners that there needs to be some alterations there in the certificate of need rules, 7849. And looking at 7850, I cannot comprehend citing such projects of that magnitude without rules. It makes no sense, and there is the option of rules. Most of those projects for the routing are on hold right now. They're stayed. So there is some time here.
I think it is unfair of you to categorize these as they're being cited and developed without rules. Many of these rules, like we said, are incorporated into statute. There's a framework that these are being proposed and worked through, and that the commission is working through. So I don't agree with that characterization.
Any other questions? And
so my motion is to do decision option 2 to deny the petition for rulemaking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you, and then I consult with our legal counsels, and yeah, we are operating under statute. I think if we are operating under statute, I don't know whether we need the rule. Sometimes we may need the rule, but I think when statute is clear enough, I think we can still work under the statute. So I don't think we need rulemaking in this case.
We have rulemaking, and when we need to have a rule, we'll make a rule. I mean, they're not perfect. We'll find points that maybe, we need to clarify something so that it's clear in the future, but we haven't got that in front of us. This is just good.
I mean, the thing is like, the idea is it's like guidance. We have guidance, and guidance either comes through, Constitution, comes through statute, it comes through rule. Like, that's how this works. And we have all the guidance we need because the legislature literally took our rules and incorporated them as statute. So if we need to make clarifications in the future, we'll go through rulemaking at that point.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. So, unless there is any other discussions, all in favor to the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Got to adjourn us.
Meeting is adjourned.